What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be breaking down a brand new 2025 NFL mock draft from Pro Football Network. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is the board that I am developing based on players I've actually graded, but if you want to be able to see why they are in the positions they are, we already have videos out on the channel breaking down the top players at each of those positions, so check that out. Let's get right into this because there's no reason to be spending all this time talking and yapping my gums, because we're here to be yapping our gums about the draft and not my board. But of course, below my board is going to be all the great ways to get involved in the community, as well as be able to take advantage of our two sponsors of the show, Olipop, as well as my favorite sponsor of all time, UnderDog Fantasy. Feel free to use the code. You get to get a 50% match of up to $250. And you get a free special pick, which is awesome. Also send your boy $60. So full transparency right there. Great company. They actually treat me really well as well. But we've done a lot of these mocks done by Oliver. Let's get right into it. So starting off with the number one pick, somehow the Commanders are here. I'm not really down to believe the Commanders are the worst team in the NFL. But they end up getting Will Johnson. That'd be ridiculous, especially pairing him up with Mikey Sainristil. That'd be super fun to see them back together there. He's the best player in the class from what I've studied, so definitely deserving the number one pick. At number two, the Titans go Luther Burden. You know, essentially you're going to be kicking Burks to the curb, even though you've kind of already done that, but you know, it's going to be over. Pretty sure Tyler Boyd's there, so it's going to be essentially going into that role, or essentially it's going to be the Tyler Boyd role for Callahan. And I'm not a huge fan of Luther Burden's motor overall, but he's a really good receiver. Again, check out the video on that. He's, I believe, my wide receiver 5, but not just because of his talent level, because his talent level is really damn good. At pick 3, the Panthers go Abdul Carter, edge / linebacker out of Penn State. I don't know, based on the reps that I've seen of Abdul, how much confidence I have that he's going to be an elite edge rusher. I really loved him as a linebacker, but TBD on that. Again, I'm going through the edge class right now, so we're going to be getting some updates this week on my top edge rankings, because I was thinking about just doing like, you know, a top 10, top 15, but you know, it looks like the top of the class is going to be a very minimum of 15 dudes, so very excited for that. Dalen Walker then goes to the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos, I don't think they need to go after a defensive interior. The problem is this guy's 6'6" and he stands straight up. So he ends up being on his ass a lot of times. I don't really believe that he's actually going to even go on day 1. I do believe he might end up being a later day 2 guy. It's just very difficult to, you know, develop a player that doesn't know how to maintain a lower center of gravity, because I mean, I guess since you're that tall, you could be essentially a roadblock, but it's very hard to be effective when you're on the ground. At pick number 5, the Saints go James Pierce. James Pierce is going to be my top edge rusher as of the moment. I'm hoping to God that changes. He's still really underdeveloped, but, you know, he has some very good quick wins, and, you know, that's what you really should be asking for. Saints probably are reaching here, but not really a bad selection. At pick 6, the Vikings go Ben Morrison, who will most likely be my number 2 player in the class when all is said and done. He did get a blue chip grade, so you know, that's very difficult to acquire. Granted, last year we had quite a few of those guys. This year it's looking a bit more slim. At 7, the Colts go Malachi Starks. After drafting multiple safeties in this past draft, I just don't really see this being a high priority for them. And Malachi, I haven't dug into the safety class yet. I do think he'll end up being a top 15 guy for me. Just pick 7. That's really rich for a safety. Excuse me. Yeah, I got the hiccups today. But at pick number 8, we got the New York Giants going Carson Beck. He's my 3rd quarterback overall. I think his arm talent, I just don't really understand why people think he has a very strong arm. A lot of his balls end up dying, and he does have to essentially, you know, increase the amount of distance in the air traveled to go, you know, if you're talking about the overall distance compared to the distance comparative to the ground. So, I mean, I might be one of those guys who's a little bit more on the Carson Beck does not have a great arm train, but I think he is an upgraded version of Kenny Pickett, and that's an upgrade from Daniel Jones. At pick number 9, we got Arizona Cardinals going Mason Graham. He is the top defensive interior for me. I do think this is a relatively respectable range for him to go. At pick number 10, the Bears go Princely Umanmielen. He is going to be tied as my 2nd best edge rusher. Depends on what Shamar Turner is going to be doing this season. I hear that he's going to try to kick more to the inside. I think that's an awful move. I'd prefer for him to drop to 280 and end up being a full-time edge rusher. But Princely Umamuland's very similar to what we saw last year, or technically this past year, with Leatu Latu in terms of those quick wins and maybe not as balanced. But Princely Umamuland's a very, very talented edge rusher. He just needs to be a bit more consistent because I saw a lot of concerns with his motor in terms of not being the same player every single play. Or, it was extremely variable, we'll put it that way. Pittsburgh Steelers go Walter Nolan, defensive interior at Ole Miss. Already have a video out on this, but Walter Nolan, he's a developmental defensive interior. I think the Steelers would be wise to try to pick him up, but not this early. He's weird because he has freakish size and a freakish build, but yet he's only 290, but he doesn't look like he's 290, which means he looks like he might be fat, but then he actually plays with unbelievable athleticism. It's crazy. It just doesn't make sense. It's a little bit of an enigma to me, but I don't really know what role Walter would play comparatively because Benton wasn't the largest guy in the world, and then we also have another former Texas A&M guy, even though Nolan just transferred, but DeMarvin Leal, who I think is similar, if not better talent than Walter Nolan. At pick 12, we got the Raiders going Shedeur Sanders. Just too much baggage for me to draft him in the first. I don't know. I just don't really think that I don't think there's a bright future for the leader of a multi-billion-dollar organization when, they can't keep, or the Sanders family can't keep really their head on straight with a college organization. That's just an opinion on my behalf. That's just the way that I end up seeing, overall, what I believe in. If I'm running a multi-billion-dollar organization, I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of bullshit that is not football related. And, that's just me. But Shedeur does have a lot of talent. Seattle Seahawks then draft Harold Perkins. I think this is incredible. I don't even know. I need to start sharing my cookies so we can actually get some more entertaining ads in here. My ad blocker's failing me. But Harold Perkins is a very talented linebacker. He'd be a perfect Seahawk. It's probably a dream fit of mine. Tetairoa McMillan goes to the Falcons. Pretty much the worst version of Drake London in every category. I mean, to be fair, his hands are spectacular, but, he's just really tall with really good hands. And unfortunately, that's pretty much all that I saw to his game that I really liked. So we'll see what happens. But, just one of those players that he's the biggest letdown, I think, from preseason hope to actual grade I think I've ever had. Genuinely speaking, I was praying that this guy could be Marvin Harrison Jr. level. And I would have him rated probably in the 20s of the last class. Minimum. So it's unfortunate, but that's just my opinion. Chargers then go Denzel Burke. It'd be funny to see an Ohio State corner go into a Michigan defense, but Denzel Burke is super balanced in literally every single category. I wouldn't mind this at all. He's just a very talented, experienced, improving corner every single year. Had a great freshman year, had that little sophomore slump, but improved as that year went on. And then he had a really solid year last year. I think he's going to have another really good year this year. The Jets then go Colston Loveland. Their tight end room does need some addition for sure. They need some extra help there. Colston's a little bit on the lighter side, but when we say the tight end class, I feel pretty confident with my tight end evaluations now. He might be somebody who could be a big win because I was a big Sam Laporta guy, or he might end up being someone who I'm not the biggest fan of. But we'll see. We'll definitely see. Michigan, definitely, he was one of the guys who popped off to me, and things do change when you start digging a little bit deeper. But Danny Dennis Sutton ends up going to the Patriots at 17. It would be fun to see Caden Wallace go up against him again in practice. That'd be cool. I've not been able to watch Dennis Sutton just yet, but he might be one of those guys I have to toss into that edge rusher list. At pick 18, we got the Dolphins going Nick Anderson, wide receiver at Oklahoma. I think that there's a better wide receiver at Oklahoma right now in Deion Burks, but I have not been able to check out Nick Anderson. It's very intriguing to see that he would be going before Burks, who is a far superior receiver. Granted, he's also really small, so you got a lot of those guys in this past draft. Ernest Green then goes to the Jaguars, another tackle. I mean, the amount of tackles the Jaguars would have at this point would be a little bit ridiculous. Ernest Green, I mean, he's somebody who's super hot and cold in my opinion. Doesn't have an official grade just yet, but I watch a lot of the edge rushers versus him, and it's not impossible for them to have a good day against Ernest Green. So if they have an easy time against him, there's very good chance that the NFL will also see similar success, but we will see. At 20, the Texans go Travis Hunter. He is my 7th best corner. And I did not grade him as a wide receiver because I just don't really believe in him as a wide receiver. Like, it's not that I've watched him and I'm like, oh, this guy can't play wide receiver. But I just think that the more valuable position where there's a bigger need for guys to actually make an impact is corner. There's a lot of really good receivers out there. You can go to the UFL and there's guys who are very competitive with some of the backup corners in this class or in the overall NFL. So there's a little bit of a lack of talent more at the cornerback position. I see a higher demand there. I'm going to put him as a corner. He's still a very, very good corner. I think he could start right away. We'll see what happens, though. Travis Hunter is a very good player at 20. That's great value. At pick 21, the Rams go, in my opinion, offensive guard Will Campbell at LSU. Perfectly fine range for me. I might boost his grade up a little bit as a guard based on what I've seen with him as a tackle. He's one of the most unique offensive tackles I've studied, but really struggles against length. 33 inches. Like, it's not a bad number until you see how it's played out. It definitely does end up being the focal point when you watch him versus longer armed edge rushers like Dallas Turner. At pick number 22, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go Mikael Williams. Going to be one of my studies this week, absolutely. So we'll report back on that. But I was a huge fan of him at the All-American game. It was the first ever All-American game I watched. Mikael Williams was one of those dudes who I ended up walking away being like, this guy is going to be a stud. Then we had 23. We got the Bills going Maxwell Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky. Love corners out of Kentucky, but this is not one of the guys that I considered being one of the top. But again, that's why we do the top, and then we study the rest of the class, so you guys get a good taste for what we'll be seeing for the majority of the mock drafts, and then we get to fill in the rest later on. Cowboys then go Ollie Gordon. They do need to potentially get a running back. I still think Deuce Vaughn is a stud. We'll see if we get to be able to meet Deuce Vaughn, because obviously my buddy Marshawn Kneeland ended up getting drafted to y'all in the second round, so we're going to get some nice little grub with him most likely this next week. That's going to be super fun. But Ollie Gordon, fantastic player. I think that he's going to be a massive win there for the Cowboys. I just don't know if he's a first rounder for me just yet, but we'll see. Then we have pick 25. Philadelphia Eagles going Nick Scourton, former Purdue edge, now going to Texas A&M. It's just probably why Shamar Turner is going more to the inside. But Nick Scourton is up next for me studying the edge rushers. I loved actually, I think his name was Sidman. I'm forgetting Sidner. He was really, really talented out of Purdue, and Scourton's even better. Purdue had a really good squad, very underrated squad last year. So Eagles definitely need to be looking for an edge rusher to add to that squad with Jalen Hunt developing. I think that would be a really solid addition. Now you got Kelvin Banks going to the Browns. I could totally see them going after this because I'm pretty sure Jedrick Wills hasn't signed an extension. And there you go. Jedrick Wills out of contract. So I think that would be not a bad idea at all. This is a good range for him to go. Kenneth Grant then goes to the Green Bay Packers. That'd be freaky. He gets moved way too easily for being 340, but he moves way better than someone who's 340. Has some great pass rush moves as well. Super fun player to watch. At pick 28, the Chiefs go to Carrio Davis. I love that for the Chiefs, honestly, based on the defensive backs that they've added in recent history. I think that this matches up a lot with what I think they would be going after. Someone who has high IQ, maybe not the best change of direction ability, but just a very smart player who has great length and a great frame. At pick number 29, the Ravens go Donovan Jackson. Very athletic offensive guard who has the ability to play offensive tackle. Pretty sure his arms are like 34 plus inches, so very good player. Definitely need a little bit more seasoning, and he might boost his stock from maybe being a third round pick this past year to a first rounder. This is a good range for him to go. And then the Niners go Johnny Cornelius, tackle out of Oregon. I mean, the tackle is a position they need to go after. Johnny never surprised me, though. I wanted him to be more of a guard when he first transferred to Oregon. But, we'll see what happens. I think Johnny still has a lot of growing up to do in terms of developing, and we'll see what happens there. Pat Payton goes to the Detroit Lions at 31. He's a little bit undersized, but he's ended up adding, I think, 15 or 16 pounds to his frame. Very excited to see the player he becomes, because unfortunately we saw that Jared Verse added some weight to his frame last year, and then he looked a bit out of shape. I don't know how good the nutrition program is, so to speak, at Florida State. I hope we don't see a regression athletically from Patrick Payton. At pick 32, the Bengals go Emeka Egbuka. It's fun to see that the Bengals would be winning the Super Bowl in this. Emeka, I think getting a nice solid slot, not a bad idea, but I don't really see. It's going to be weird to have two slot/boundary hybrids that primarily should be in the slot, and Emeka Egbuka as well as Jermaine Burton. I don't really see this one being a great position to target, but Emeka Egbuka is a good player. He's a developmental receiver for me. He took a big step back last year due to health concerns, but he definitely has the ability to bounce back. Will Howard very well might use him a lot, and he might end up really accelerating, and that would make me more happy than ever. So that's going to be the video. It's a little bit of a quickie right there. Pause. But I do want to be able to get you guys some content out. We're going to be going into breaking down the team's draft philosophies for the future. Not philosophies, but at their outlook for the future, as well as just an overall deep dive into their franchise. I mean, yeah, that franchise guy does it, and he does a great job at it. At the same time, that doesn't mean that we can't, because, I mean, we have differing opinions. It's a great way to be able to show why I think the way I do. And it's also a great way for you guys to get a good gotcha once the season starts. So that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching. Love y'all. See you on the far side. Peace.